Hey leader, David Burkus here, organizational psychologist and author of 4 best-selling books on helping leaders and teams do their best work ever. And in this episode, we're going to talk about how to create a remote team working agreement. Or if you're leading a hybrid or a co-located team, a team working agreement. One of the things we know about individual performance, team performance, one of the things we know about talent is that talent flows from teams, and how well those teams can communicate and collaborate has a massive effect on how well individual performance is unlocked. Now, you should care about that because of the performance of your people, but also your own performance as a leader is going to be massively shaped by whether or not your team clicks in terms of communication and collaboration. We knew this before we moved into a work from anywhere world, but because of the world we're living in now, it's even more important. And many of the most successful teams, both co-located and remote, have found their success because of their ability to establish norms of communication and collaboration through a team working agreement. This is a living document that the team drafts that says these are the ground rules for how we're going to communicate. These are the expectations and norms for how we're going to discuss information, how we're going to arrive at problem solving, etc. And in this video, we're going to talk about the steps you need to go through to create that team working agreement for yourself. And by the way, in the link below this video, we've got a 3-page PDF that'll walk you through everything that we're talking about in this video and that you could use as a checklist while you're conducting the video. So make sure you check that out as well. That'll be in the link right below this video. Let's get started. Now, the first thing you want to do as you're creating this team working agreement is you want to do this on the team. That means you're going to need to call a meeting. This works best when it is a dedicated meeting. So this is not the type of thing you just want to add on, tack 30 minutes onto the normal weekly all hands meeting to discuss this. This is also not the thing where you want to have multiple agenda items. The purpose of this meeting should just be to come up with this team working agreement. So let your team know when you're calling this meeting that that's what it's about, that should be their preparation, to think and reflect on what they know as good communication, the pet peeves that they have about how the team currently coordinates. Give them some warning so they have time to reflect on what they want those norms to be and can come prepared. If you put multiple different agenda items on it, or if you tack it on to the regular weekly meeting, people aren't going to have that right frame of mind to have this discussion because they'll be thinking about a million other things. This is a solo, dedicated meeting that you'll put on your people's calendar, or you'll ask people when the best time for it would be and then collectively come up with on your calendar. And the whole purpose of this meeting is just to create this document. You'll also want to think ahead of time about how you're going to capture ideas. If you're a co-located team, this is easy, right? A whiteboard or a bunch of Post-it notes or something like that. But if you're working fully remotely, and this is something that everybody's going to be zooming into or joining Microsoft Teams for, then you want to have a whiteboard document, a Google Doc, something that can be shared and updated in real time that people can look at, because we're going to be drafting this thing like a declaration of interdependence. And so we want people to be able to see it as we are drafting it and agree or disagree with the way we're phrasing things so that we can come to the perfect phraseology. So these are the things you need to do before we get into the meeting. Ideally, this is about a week to a little bit longer than a week time frame that we're doing these things to prepare, so that when we call the meeting, we've given people adequate time to expect, to make themselves available, because you need everyone on the team on this meeting. And about a week to a little more than a week later, we arrive at the actual meeting. And in that actual meeting, you don't just want to dive in and go, hey team, our communication is terrible, our collaboration is awful, let's make it better by coming up with this document. No. Well, you don't want to say that at all. But in truth, you don't even want to dive into the team working agreement conversation. It might be good to have a little bit of a warm-up, something that gets people talking and communicating. If you're working remotely, one of my favorite things to do for a remote team kind of warm-up is to have people give a little virtual tour of where they're working from. Some people are still confined to their house. Some people have a dedicated office in their house. Other people are working from the dining room. Some people are working from the back deck. Some people are on vacation. It's just kind of nice to check in and see the environment that everyone is in. Not only does it get everyone used to talking and sharing on this call so they know they're going to be participating, not just sitting back passively and receiving information, but it also lets everyone else on the team know the context that people are having this meeting in, and so they know what to expect if somebody quickly drops off the call because they're working from their dining room table, or if somebody is suddenly overexposed because they're working from the back deck and the sun moved. Everybody knows those sort of things. And we also subtly know the frame of mind people are in because now we've seen their environment. And now, if you're working in a co-located team and you're doing this agreement, you obviously it'd be pretty boring to have everybody give you a tour of the same conference room you're doing this in. So you could think of something else. You could ask people for the classic rose and a thorn. What's something great happening in your week? What's something kind of painful or a problem you're happening in a week? That quick activity. Or you could ask people to share their biggest communication fails they've ever had in their career. Hopefully not on this team, but the biggest fails they've ever had in their career, so that they can get used to sharing and that we subtly transition into the actual discussion around the team. But you're going to want to do a warm-up. You're going to want to do something that puts everyone in the right mood and gives everyone the feeling that they need to participate, not just receive information, and also gets their mind thinking a little bit about this communication thing before we dive into the actual discussion. Now, in the actual discussion, I found the best way to do it is frame the discussion around questions, preferably questions you've come up with ahead of time, but future questions will happen as the team talks about things, and so be willing to that. So you'd have one area in your shared document or your whiteboard if you're in person where you're listing the questions you already knew you wanted to ask, and then at the bottom of that, people can place those other questions about communication and collaboration. If you don't know what to ask, here's a couple different questions you could use to get started. You could ask what information needs to be shared team-wide and what information doesn't require reply all. You could ask how we might communicate team-wide announcements best. A lot of teams, especially remote teams, have multiple different mediums of communication, from email to project management software to a Slack channel. What information works best for what medium? You definitely want to ask about response times for all of those given mediums. So a lot of people sort of subtly agree that 24 hours is a reasonable amount of time to reply to an email, but a lot of people don't act like they have a full 24 hours to reply to that email, and they end up firing off replies at 11:30 at night because they want to inbox zero, and then they make everybody else feel stressed because they wake up to a gajillion emails from all of those zeroers, right? So you want to ask these questions about response time so that there's some norms. I know when I need to respond. You may also want to pivot that into a conversation about when are our always on times and when are our always off times, and what are people's calendars. This discussion would be a time to coordinate those calendars as well. You want to have a couple questions about project management and about how we keep people updated. So you want to ask the question, how do we share what we're working on? Or how do we share the struggles and make requests for help? How do we just keep track of everything and update everyone? If you're using a project management software already, some of these questions will be already answered by the specifics of the software, but this would also be a time to talk about best practices and best ways to use that software. And I think it's especially important to ask questions around those requests for information. I hinted at it a couple seconds ago, but I think this one is key, because what often happens, especially in a remote team, is that you feel like as the leader, you're actually managing a series of individual relationships, and it's all on you to keep track of everyone's knowledge, skills, abilities, strengths, weaknesses, etc., so that when people make a request for help to you, you know who to refer them to. But it would work better as a team if we knew what everybody's individual strengths, weaknesses, knowledge, skills, and abilities were, and as a team we knew and had a group way to make those requests, besides just sending out a blanket email, hey, does anyone know how functions work in Excel? We don't want to be asking that of everyone. We want to know who is the right person and how we should be asking that person for those information or technical requests as well. Now, these are just a couple different questions. You can use these, but you probably have ones that are specific to your team that you thought of, even if you're listening and watching this video. So add those. And as you go through these questions, your teammates will come up with additional questions. That's fine. Just add them to the bottom of the list and don't end the meeting until we have answers as a team to every one of those questions. The answers become the group norms, and this is how we turn the discussion around these questions into that actual living team working agreement. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take the answers to those questions that we've captured and we're going to turn them into affirmative answers. So I used the example earlier of 24 hours being a reasonable response to email. That was the answer to a question. Now it's a declarative statement. We affirm that 24 hours is a reasonable amount of time to wait for an email reply, and we will not move from email to a more synchronous platform until that has been passed. And we agree that if we need a faster response, we'll use X platform for a faster response, probably a phone or a text message or Slack or something like that. But you see how we moved from an answer to that actual statement. We agree that this, or we affirm that this is the way that we're going to act. We're looking here for statements about norms of behavior that are positive, that are affirmative, and that we can say that word we agree with. We do that answer by answer, and we come up with probably about a one-page document that's a list of, you could think of them as bullet points, but it's a list of different points of behavior that we all agree to. Now, this is in that shared document, and it's something we can all commit to, but it's good to actually end the meeting with people giving a verbal commitment. Yes, I agree. We've wordsmithed this, we've talked about it, and I agree with what's on the paper. Next, I agree with what's on the paper. Next, I agree with what. And then we can share this document out. And you'll find that this is actually a super useful document, not just for your current team, but when you're looking to add new team members, you can actually present them. This is the way that we interact as a team. Does this work for you? Or when problems happen, this can be a document that helps with conflict resolution, because often you'll find that interpersonal conflict stems from somebody actually violating the rules of the working agreement, and you can pass that back. This is a living document though, so you're going to want to update it every 6 months, maybe every 12 months, definitely every time a new member is sort of fully onboarded on the team. You may want to ask, hey, is it worth sticking to these agreements, or do you need to make some adjustments because we hired someone who lives on the other side of the world, for example, something like that. So this is a living document that we'll go back to often. But the important thing is now you went through the hard work of drafting it the first time. So any further discussions are more about those agreements and how we want to wordsmith them, and that makes it a lot faster to happen. Now you could probably tag this on to a weekly all hands meeting or add other agenda items because you did the hard focused work of doing it the first time. But most teams never do this work. And as a result, they all have their own unstated sense of norms, and conflict arises when norms that we didn't even know about were violated in someone's mind. That's what makes people feel offended. That's what makes people harbor bad feelings. That's what creates that long-term conflict that doesn't actually start boiling up until it's gone way too far. So there's a lot of reasons to use this working agreement beyond just the working agreement. But now you've got a document that everybody agrees to. Now the last thing you need to do is just send it out. Send it out in a form that's not editable. You're the leader. You control whether or not it's edited in that actual meeting. But send it out to everyone as a PDF or as a JPEG. You can even design it nicely in a tool like Canva or something like that. But send it out to everybody so that it's there. Post it in the project management software you're using, etc., so people can see it everywhere that they are and double check it. This is what we agreed to. This was our declaration of interdependence. And now that we have this agreement, we'll be working together much faster, much quicker. We'll be collaborating with each other much better. And we will be doing as a team our best work ever. Hey, thanks so much for watching this episode. If you liked it, make sure you're subscribed or following this channel. And if you really liked it and you want to go deeper, then check out the resources we have for you at davidburkus.com/resources. Guaranteed there's something in there that'll help you and your team do your best work ever.